And welcome back into STL Sports Central. Joe Roderick, Randy Carricker, Bernie Miklasz. You know what we're doing here. We're week 3 into the countdown or count up, if you will. 0 through 99. We are going through all of the best of the best.
Does Omar Oliveras just or Bobby Bonds, do they default get 00?
I feel like 0 and 00, just we kind of lumped them in together, right?
The same.
We just kind of gave it to Mason Wynn in hopes that he takes it and just runs with it.
Yeah, I'm with
10, 15 years here in St. Louis, but we're already in the 20s. We are almost a quarter of the way through today as we get to one of those where I think, talking with you, Randy, texting with Bernie about this, I wonder, we're going to come across some names and numbers where I think you guys are going to be really torn on this, not because of how good the guys are, but maybe also because of personal relationships you guys have made with some of these guys over their careers in St. Louis, because we stop at 24 today and there's a couple names to talk about. Whitey Herzog and Bernie Federko, 2 St. Louis icons that wore number 24 here in St. Louis.
And both in the Hall of Fame, and both basically were the faces of their franchise for an extended period. Obviously, from the time Bernie came up, basically 1977 until he was traded after 1988. And then Whitey changed the fortunes of Cardinal baseball. Well, Bernie, my introduction to quality baseball was when Whitey got here in 1980, and I hadn't seen anything like it. I remembered vaguely the 67 World Championship, but Whitey brought something different and alluring that we hadn't seen before. And obviously, you had a great relationship with the late, great Whitey Herzog. So smart, and not only changed the fortunes of the team, but changed baseball for a decade too.
He did.
It's really hard to choose. So I'm going to let you decide.
Hey, no, let's talk about Whitey Herzog since you were he was a transformative figure in St. Louis sports history. As you know better than I do, the 1970s were flat for the Cardinals. They might have gotten to playoffs had there been a wild card format and all that, but there was just a flat decade. So the thing about him is he's one of the greatest managers in the history of the game, because when you talk about his winning percentage and what he's done, and just the way he immediately uplifted teams that he managed, particularly the Royals and the Cardinals. But he also, what he did with the Cardinals was his ability to look at, well, we've got this big, huge Grand Canyon of a ballpark. We've got AstroTurf. It plays fast. We're not going to out-hit it. We're not going to outpower anyone. We're going to be killed if we don't prioritize defense. And so we're just going to have to change the entire style of play. We're going to have to go with something radically different. And how many managers would have the guts to do that, to think outside the box? And as they say, the rest is history, because that's exactly what those 1980s Cardinals thrived on. They were not only a really successful team with 3 pennants and a World Series championship, but their style of play was invigorating. It was new. It was exciting. Everyone around baseball loved it. And then he sort of brought the stolen base back in baseball. Teams said, hey, well, this can work if we get enough guys. The other thing that made Whitey special is because it's one thing to be a great manager, but he was also the guy that, in effect, put the teams together. He was technically the general manager for a while, but even when he wasn't technically the general manager, he was still running everything. So he put the team together, he constructed the roster, and then he was the architect for an entirely new style of play. How many people in St. Louis, like in St. Louis sports history, let alone baseball history, how many baseball guys have done something this extraordinary? So that's why he's like a really unique character. I mean, in terms of Cardinals history, because the all-encompassing nature of his job. He just didn't show up and fill out a lineup card. That said, man, Bernie Federko, my gosh, can we just declare a tie? I guess we can't do that. I love Bernie Federko. Love this guy.
Let me go back to one other thing about Whitey
Sure.
beyond the field. And not everybody in the Cardinal organization is completely aware of Cardinal history. We got a chance because we lived it. But one of the things that I brought up because of where they are now with the system, if you go back, Whitey Herzog gave Tommy Herr a chance to play when he got here in 1980. But then you start going through those years. He brought up a young right-hander who was going to be great. He got hurt. His name was Andy Rincon. He got hit with a batted ball. He was going to be a number one quality starter. He gets hit with a batted ball, and he was never the same. In 82, Willie McGee. In 83, Danny Cox. In 84, it was Terry Pendleton and Rick Horton. In 85, it was Vince Coleman. In 86, the rookie of the year was Todd Worrell. In 87, Joe McGrain. You know, for an organization that was built on having a system, they brought up an impact rookie every single year, and that was because of Whitey and Whitey's history in development. He was that good at what he did.
No, now, I agree, and I would put Andy Van Slyke on the list because even though Whitey traded him, that was part of his value too. Van Slyke was a hell of a young player, but they were also able to trade him for a catcher that Whitey really coveted, and Tony Pena.
And Whitey had, as the general manager, he'd put that group of people in place that helped develop all those people. It wasn't a separate. When he put those people in place, he was in charge, and then they stayed in charge when Joe McDonald came in as the general manager.
He made he made the trade for Ozzie Smith. My goodness, I mean,
pretty good right there, right?
Yeah, I mean that you know, that's the thing about Whitey. You could put like 7 or 8 things at the top of the list, but that's it. He had so many great achievements here. You know, and getting Ozzie here changed everything. And then he continued to build upon that.
And the year before that, Suter, right?
Right.
And making those trades. Now, Bernie Federko, Wayne Gretzky had his office behind the net. Before Wayne Gretzky did, Bernie Federko did. And he changed kind of the way the setup position was played in the NHL. Guys didn't always work behind the net, and Bernie Federko kind of initiated that style of play in the league. So he was transformative as well, maybe not as much locally as he was in terms of hockey circles, but Bernie, 1,000 points. Bernie Miklas, we talk about Bernie Federko with being a 1,000-game, 1,000-point guy. That just doesn't happen.
No, and the thing about him, he was never able to enjoy the fruits of a Stanley Cup victory, but it wasn't his fault. I mean, he played for some ownership groups that didn't have a lot of money, and they were cutting corners all the time. And it's not like Bernie Federko put those rosters together. He was sort of a captive to whatever the people above him did. So I don't hold that against him at all. Obviously, that they didn't win the Stanley Cup. And the other thing about Bernie, and I think this needs to be, mentioned as well, is that his longevity as a St. Louisan. I mean, someone who put his, not only his family and his career and his heart and his soul in the St. Louis community. He is a proud St. Louisan and has lived his entire adult life here. And he's still, how many years has he been serving the Blues in one capacity or other? He's still doing it over at FanDuel Sports Midwest. And he's a beloved figure. That's why it's so tough to have to choose between these two guys. They're both Hall of Famers. They both had tremendous impact on St. Louis sports. And I don't know what else to say to try to decide the two, except, and this is not fair to Bernie, because he never had a chance to be a franchise architect. But Whitey was a franchise architect, and he did win a World Series, and he did put together teams that also won 3 pennants. And he also changed St. Louis baseball, including the fan interest. So if are you asking me, I have to pick, I can't be a coward and run out of the room.
I do want to say that, I mean, when you look at this, for some of these debates, like you can look at it and say, they did this and they're 15 years in St. Louis and then they moved on. But these two, as you guys mentioned, with Bernie Federko being a part of the broadcast crew for so long,
50 years,
and Whitey also Whitey stayed in the St. Louis community and was around for a really long time as well afterwards, and showing up at all kinds of events and doing a lot of stuff within the Cardinals organization as well. So these are two guys who, even after retirement, even after their careers were over with, they stuck around. And that's for me. I never saw Bernie Federko play. I never saw Whitey Herzog's teams on the baseball field, but I know the two of them because of the legacy that they left in, or that they are still creating, in Federko's case, still in St. Louis years after their careers were done.
It's remarkable. Bernie, couple quick ones. Number one, this one is semi-serious. He falls off, but and you'll remember this guy. Back in the 70s, the football Cardinals had a running back named Wayne Morris who wore 24. He's still second all time in rushing touchdowns for the Cardinal franchise.
I didn't know that.
Behind
I didn't know
Jay
that.
Anderson, 37 rushing touchdowns. And then how can we forget Trunk Candidate?
Very easily.
Funny.
There is another 24 kind of to throw on here. You got to jump in a time machine and go back a little bit. Marvin Barnes also 24.
Oh yeah,
in
maybe,
St. Louis. Yeah.
Maybe the number one sports character, colorful character in St. Louis sports history, and he was a great talent. But Bob Costas has got 20,000 incredible stories about Marvin Barnes. So
I'm with you, Bernie. And obviously, we could do the Tony La Russa tied for first, but we aren't allowed.
Right.
But to me, the trophy is what sets Whitey apart from Bernie.
We hand things off to you. We'd love to hear your input on this debate, the on-ice career of Bernie Federko or the managerial career and what he built of Whitey Herzog with the Cardinals. Hand it off to you. Leave your thoughts in the comments and join in on the conversation on all of our social media assets as well here on STL Sports Central as we continue to look at the best of the best, every jersey number in St. Louis sports history.